everybody. On behalf of CISCRP and the planning team, I have the pleasure of welcoming you to Aware for All Southwest. My name is Justine Holleran, and I am the Senior Coordinator of Events and Community Engagement at CISCRP. CISCRP, or the Center for Information and Study on Clinical Research Participation, is a nonprofit organization that educates the public about clinical research. We don't conduct trials or recruit for trials, but we do believe that everyone should have the access to resources they need to make informed decisions about clinical research and their health. If you have any questions throughout the event, please shoot us a message in the Q&A box, which I am highlighting now on your screens. Our team will be monitoring this chat and will bring up any questions you may have during the Q&A portion of the program. And now I'd like to take a minute to thank our planning team organizations, Alzheimer's Los Angeles, City of Hope, DHR Health Institute for Research and Development, Excell Research, St. John's Cancer Institute, and Valley Baptist Medical Centers. I'd also like to thank our generous Aware for All sponsors, ICON, the Allergy and Asthma Network, TrialScope, and Praxis Precision Medicines, and every wonderful community organization that has collaborated with us on this event. A very special thank you to our Aware Industry Consortium, Biogen, CSL Behring, EMD Serono, Genentech, IQVIA, Janssen, Novartis, Otsuka, Pfizer, and WCG. Without your help and support, this program would not have been possible. And just a reminder that you can visit all of these organizations in the Informational Exhibit Center, or IEC, by clicking the banners on your screen or on the resource list, which I am also highlighting on your screens right now. The IEC will remain on our website indefinitely, and a link can be found on awareforall.org or in our post-event email. And while you're there, keep an eye out for 2 scavenger hunt kiosks. If you find both of these, you'll be entered to win a $100 Visa gift card. So to kick off the evening, we'd love to share a quick overview video of clinical trials and the process behind the scenes. A link to this video and many other resources can be found in the digital handbook, which is in that resource list again. And it will also be included in the follow-up email at the end of the evening.
People around the world are becoming more aware of new therapies that are being developed. These therapies, such as drugs and vaccines, are developed through clinical trials. All clinical trials begin with a question that scientists, including doctors and disease experts, want to answer. To do this, scientists prepare a development plan based on early studies done in the lab. Next, researchers submit a request to regulatory and government agencies, like the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and the European Medicines Agency, to begin testing a new therapy in people. Once this request is approved, researchers seek volunteers to participate in clinical trials. The success of these trials depends on including a diverse group of people representative of those who may be treated by the new therapy if it is approved for use. There are 4 phases of clinical trials. During phase 1, a new therapy is given to a small group of participants. The goals are to check the safety, find a safe dose, and track any medical problems. During phase 2, researchers check the therapy's safety and how it works in participants with a specific disease or condition. During phase 3, researchers check the therapy's safety and how well it works in a larger group of people with the specific medical condition. Phase 4 trials happen after a therapy has been approved and made available to the public. Researchers look at how the therapy works in the real world and its long-term effects. This whole process could take over 8 years. And vaccine development typically takes even longer because there are more safety tests. This development process is important because it's the best way to ensure that the safest, most effective therapies reach the public.
Hi, my name is Dr. Jonathan Jackson. I'm the founder and executive director of the Community Access, Recruitment, and Engagement, or CARE, Research Center at Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School. I've designed and run clinical trials, but more importantly, I've also participated as a study volunteer in dozens and dozens of research studies. so I've been on both sides of the clinical research process. Clinical research awareness is important, and it's important to me because I believe that the only way new cures and treatments work for everyone is if everyone gets involved in the process. So throughout this video, my goal is to tell you more about clinical trials and help answer questions you may have about participation.
Why do people participate in clinical trials? Study volunteers have different reasons for joining clinical trials. Many people participate because they want to help advance science and help others. Some people participate because clinical trials are their best treatment option or because they want to learn more about their own health. Along with complementary medical care, sometimes study volunteers receive compensation for their time and participation. These are also good reasons for why people volunteer. What is the informed consent process? Before participating in a clinical trial, study volunteers review an informed consent form with the study doctor or nurse. This helps study volunteers understand what is expected of them during the trial and lets them know about the possible risks and benefits. While all study volunteers are required to sign the informed consent form, it is important to know that this form is not a contract. Study volunteers have the right to stop participation at any time during the clinical trial. They also have the right to ask questions at any time during the trial. What does participation in a clinical trial look like? The first part of the clinical trial is called the screening period. Each trial has guidelines called eligibility criteria that say what type of person the study can include. For example, healthy volunteers or patients with a certain condition. During this period, the study staff will find out whether a study volunteer meets these eligibility criteria. Next is the treatment period, in which the study volunteers may receive a therapy. In a clinical trial for a vaccine against an infectious disease, healthy volunteers may receive the vaccine. No matter what kind of therapy a study volunteer receives, the study staff will monitor their health and safety throughout the clinical trial. After the treatment period is done, the follow-up period begins. During this time, the study volunteers no longer receive the therapy, but their health is still closely monitored. This helps researchers learn about any long-term benefits or possible medical problems. How can you make clinical trials work for you and your family? The success of clinical trials depends on including a diverse group of people representative of those who may receive the new therapy if it is approved for use. Right now, many groups of people are underrepresented in clinical trials. So, how can you get involved? One way is to ask your doctor or patient advocacy group about how you can help design clinical trials or monitor the groups that design these studies. Another way is to consider participation as a study volunteer. Even if you aren't looking for a new treatment, you can join a research study as a healthy volunteer. You can find out if trials are available at a local hospital or community health center. You can also search online for participation opportunities. Many patient advocacy groups and the United States federal government maintain up-to-date lists of clinical trials that are looking for volunteers.
我參加臨床實驗前應該問邊啲問題呢？
During the informed consent process, you can and should ask the study team any questions that you may have about the study visit schedule, required procedures, and any other aspect of participation that's important to you. For example, you can ask the study team about how the results of the trial will be shared and how you can see the impact that you made through your participation.
How have people described their experience participating in a clinical trial?
Great question. In a recent global survey among people who have recently participated in a clinical trial, the majority of folks reported positive experiences and minimal disruption to their daily routine. Most of them also indicated that they would be willing to participate in another clinical trial in the future. But before you participate in a trial, make sure you talk to the study team about what to expect so that you can know whether participation is right for you.
What are some of the ways that clinical trials are becoming more accessible to participants?
Researchers are now using a lot of technology to make clinical trial participation easier. This includes text message reminders, smartphone apps, other kinds of mobility support, including free transportation services to and from the clinic. They're also making tools to help reduce burdens of participation for study volunteers. So, talk to the study team about what they're doing to make it easier or make it possible for you to get involved.
¿Cómo podré encontrar un estudio que funcione para mí?
This is the big question. There are all kinds of clinical trials, and many don't even require taking a medicine. Still, you should have a good conversation with your care provider first. Patient advocacy organizations can help you find a good match, but there are also several websites devoted to connecting study volunteers to clinical trials. So these include government-maintained databases such as clinicaltrials.gov in the United States or clinicaltrialsregister.eu in Europe. There are websites that are run by nonprofits such as searchclinicaltrials.org and researchmatch.org. There are patient advocacy group sites and websites, of course, run by pharmaceutical companies and medical centers that all list active trials. So get out there and check some of those out. There's definitely one that fits you.
I hope you all enjoyed that video, and you should now be seeing a poll question pop up on your screens. There will be 4 more questions popping up throughout the night, so keep an eye out for those. By answering these, you'll be helping us gather some really important information for our upcoming programs, and your name will be entered into a raffle. You'll have 30 seconds to answer each of these questions. So as we move on to the panel discussion, I just want to remind everyone of our Q&A feature. It's a really great way to interact with our speakers and ask them any questions that you might have about clinical research. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome all of our panelists and Ken Getz, founder and CEO of CISCRP, who will be moderating our panel discussion tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Justine, for the introduction, and I want to extend a really warm welcome to everyone who's joined us this evening. We really have a great panel discussion lined up. I want to really thank CISCRP for hosting the program, and I want to thank the CISCRP team for all of their hard work in planning tonight's Aware for All. And of course, I want to extend a thank you to all of our panelists who you'll get to meet in just a moment. This is always such an unusual and special part of our Aware for All program, where you have a chance to hear from individuals who bring their unique perspective to clinical research, whether they've been a participant in a study in the past, they are someone who is involved in clinical research at a research center, or perhaps a professional who's working in a pharmaceutical company or an organization that manages clinical trial activity on behalf of a sponsor company. You'll have a chance to really hear from a variety of these people in a variety of perspectives. We'll all learn from each other. And of course, this is a great way for you to learn from their firsthand experiences. So there's so much value in that as well. So the first question I want to pose for our panelists, and then I'll gradually invite them to join us as each of them will turn on their camera. The first question is really for each of them to introduce themselves and share with you a little bit about how they have been or are currently involved in clinical research. And I'd like to begin by inviting 2 of our panelists who have been clinical trial participants, Charlene and Angie, to join us. And Charlene, and can you kick us off and tell us a bit about yourself and your experience? And you can go ahead and turn on your camera as well.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Charlene Upshaw. I have been on both sides of research because I became a patient, but for 27 years prior to that, I worked in clinical research and still do work in clinical research. So because of my knowledge of clinical research and the importance of it, because of my personal experiences, unfortunately, with losing several family members, my dad, my uncle, my grandfather, and my baby brother, all to different types of cancer. Clinical research has always been very important to me. I never thought I would have I never thought I would have to be a person to even have that option of wanting to participate in a trial, but unfortunately I found myself in that position, and I knew without even it being discussed by my caregivers that that was something I wanted to do.
Thank you, Charlene. Angie, if I can invite you now to introduce yourself. Maybe Angie's having some technical difficulties, and we'll come back to you, Angie, in just a moment.
No, there we go. Am I okay now?
Are. Yes, you sound great.
Okay, so hi, I'm Angie. I'm really pleased to be here. So I'm living with primary progressive multiple sclerosis and was diagnosed back in 2017. And some of my symptoms had started way before then, but like our last panelist and also the physician from Mass General, I too have the unique perspective of kind of like being on both sides of clinical trials, because prior to now, because I've stopped working due to my condition, I worked as a nurse, and I started for about 5 years in clinic nursing. And then I went to go work for a biomedical company that would get devices for blood and cell therapy. And so I was able to work with healthcare practitioners, physicians, some of the regulatory agencies to see what it takes to get that over to, to the patients or to the participants that I am today. And then also even talking to physicians and trying to introduce a new therapy or a new device or something that's on the market that they should consider, and some of the challenges that kind of are involved with all of that. And then I found myself years later diagnosed with this autoimmune disorder, which really kind of fell right in line with the work I was already doing. And it was so mind-blowing to see of areas that I just saw significant gaps where as a patient, as a chronic patient in the system, like, where do I fall? What are my options? How do I get information? And it was really crazy. So I think I've really become super passionate about advocacy, because I know that there's so much great information out there. It's just, and I even have a medical background and I was really challenged, like, where do I go to get some of this information? And so for me, that's why I felt like it was so important. And since then, everything's just been flourishing. I've been involved in all sorts of stuff.
Thank you both so much. And I wanted to mention that we'll have a chance shortly to talk about some of the challenges that the two of you have alluded to, as well as even some of the most meaningful parts of your experience in clinical research, both as a professional as well as a participant. I'll now invite Lisa and Malik to join us. And Lisa, if you could now tell us about your background and your involvement in clinical research.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you, of course, to our clinical trial participants. We would not be here if it wasn't for them. My name is Lisa Treviño, and I currently serve as the Vice President for Research and Development at the DHR Health Institute for Research and Development. I'm a molecular biologist by training, and have been, my background is mostly all in research. I started off doing basic research and moved over into the translational research side, doing a postdoc at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, looking at the genetics and genomics of children that had ALL. I moved over to the Human Genome Sequencing Center at Baylor College of Medicine and really dug deeper into the genetic and genomic landscape of different cancers. I was really afforded the wonderful opportunity to come back home. I'm born and raised here in the Rio Grande Valley, to start up the research program at DHR Health. And we're in a community that is incredibly under-accessed, medically under-accessed and medically underserved. And we recognize the need to bring clinical research, or as I like to think of it, advanced clinical care to the community. So my role is to bring clinical trials to the community of the Rio Grande Valley, and mostly in those areas that affect this community, and a lot of communities that are historically underrepresented: diabetes, obesity, liver disease, cardiovascular disease. And of course, always with the point of informing and educating the community so they can make informed decisions to participate. We all highly underrepresentation of minorities in clinical trials. So, and many organizations together, we're trying to move that needle and continue to encourage participation and engagement.
Thank you, Lisa. And Malik, I'll invite you to tell us your story as well.
Yeah, so I have been a recruitment specialist for clinical research studies for a little bit over a year now. Before that, I was working in like a short-term residential treatment program for kids who were teenagers to all the way up to 21. So I was kind of familiar with the side in terms of like some of those type of people taking different type of medications that may or may not have been helping their symptoms. And then a lot of those kids as well just aren't aware about clinical research and some of these treatments that may help them out more than what they may currently already be taking. So when I got started, I was definitely big into the sense of helping people who may have been suffering from similar type of symptoms that they were, or who were just trying to help move along, science in terms of finding new treatments that may better help people. And also I've just been learning a whole lot in terms of these studies aren't just looking to have people be guinea pigs like some of you may assume. It's a lot different than that. Some of these studies may just be looking to add on medications to what people currently may be already taking. Some of them already have FDA approved medications that they're just seeing how well it works for helping a different type of indication. They're just, trying to help different people, just have the best type of treatment for them. And for me, it's just a blessing to be able to help people with these type of issues, even if I'm just spreading awareness and just giving the word out there. It's definitely beneficial for me, just, and have been enjoying what I do.
Great. Thank you, Malik. So let's now invite our remaining two panelists, Becky and Carmen. And Becky, if you could now introduce yourself and tell us about your involvement in clinical research.
Yes, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Becky Johnson. I work for a contract research organization named IQVIA. So we coordinate clinical trials when pharmaceutical manufacturing companies outsource to us to conduct their studies on behalf of them. My background in clinical research started 13 years ago at my current company in patient recruitment. And so I designed strategies to help research sites first find research participants, based on where they were in their healthcare journey, and then communicate with these potential participants about a particular trial opportunity. I've also been engaged for several years with efforts to diversify clinical trials so we can improve access and opportunity for populations that more so reflect the burden of a particular disease. And I focused on this personally and professionally. This was the focus of my doctoral dissertation. At the same time, I've been working alongside others at IQVIA for several years to support our sponsors with their goals of being more purposeful and expanding trial participation to be more representative. And now I'm 100% dedicated in my role now to diversity and inclusion and in making sure we're being inclusive with our outreach efforts and educating potential trial participants in the most culturally appropriate ways.
Great, thank you, Becky. And Carmen, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me this evening. My name is Carmen White, and I currently serve as the Director of Multicultural Participant Experience at Pfizer. And in this role, I work with our clinical trial teams, our patient advocacy groups externally, and other partners to create educational and awareness programs, and like others on this call, inform access to clinical trial participation.
Great. Thank you so much. So I hope our audience this evening can tell just how experienced and knowledgeable our panel members. All of you really bring such extensive experience, in many cases having not only participated in studies, but also having worn so many different hats and been involved in so many different ways. So let's start with a discussion about what you most enjoy or what you find the most meaningful about your work and your involvement in clinical research. And perhaps, Malik, I can ask you to kick us off, and then we'll open it up as more of a free-flowing discussion. But if you could just share a few thoughts on what you most enjoy or what do you find most meaningful in your work in clinical research?
I think the most meaningful thing would be just in terms of helping people, just spreading awareness. So when we do our different type of outreaches and everything here at Excell Research, we had an outreach event down in Oceanside that was a senior expo. So we were just spreading awareness about our Alzheimer's studies along with some of our other studies we have as well, just in terms of letting people know that there are new treatments that are being looked at and people are coming up with to try to help out with their symptoms. And also if we are able to get people back in here, and some of the people are very thankful, like, over the phone that they participated in the trial with us. We have a lot of patients that we kind of use for different type of studies because they're definitely enjoy the process. And it's just great to know that we help out a lot of people and just spread awareness about new treatments.
That's great. Charlene, can I draw you in and hear your thoughts about what you found most meaningful and what you most enjoy?
I think the thing I find most meaningful is that, that I'll make a difference in something that happens 10, 20 years down the road, that the next generation that comes from, even from just my family, it doesn't matter, that I'll make a difference because of what I did. And not saying that in a pat myself on the back or boastful way, but I just know that it's important. And I know that, seeing my dad and my baby brother and, go through cancer treatments and chemo and all the things that they went through, that even though that was bad, that 10, 20, 30 years ago, it was worse because science didn't know what they know today. So it's very important. And even though, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, nobody will know our names or where we lived or what our lives were about, we will have made a difference. And that makes me feel really good. I'm kind of a corny person, and I believe in all the do things that are unselfish. Sometimes you may not reap the benefit from it, but if next generations can, then that's a good thing. And one of the other things I like too, and unfortunately the onset of the pandemic kind of destroyed that, but there's a community. I was involved with a community of people who had gone through the same things I did. So when we were sharing and talking, they knew from experience how I was feeling and the ups and the downs that I was having and the fears that I was having, because they too had those same things going on. So I really like that community, that brotherhood, that sisterhood. It's not the best community to be a part of, but at the end of the day, you do need that. So I really liked that, and I hope somewhere down the road, when we're a little further out with the pandemic, that I can become involved. Oh my goodness, I can become involved with something like that again.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Those are such valuable thoughts. And perhaps, Angie, you could piggyback on some of the things that Carmen has expressed and share some of your perspective on what's been most meaningful for you.
Yeah, for me, it was really important to take an active role in my health. And so that means what's going to happen in the future. So, like many diseases out there is no cure. So, and when there are limited options in terms of therapeutics that you can do to kind of help you or prolong the progression of disease, it kind of spurs some interest in trying to want to participate, to look for those. And sometimes there might be some immediate effect that I can participate in, and others, they might be down the road, but nonetheless, very important. And having my, science background or medical background, I realize just how important those things are. And so for me in particular, because my disease is one of the progressive types, all of the research I find, and I found extremely frustrating as someone that fits in this box where there are fewer people and less research dollars are going to the area that I fall in. And it's like, okay, well, this is great that 85% of people fall over here and all this money's going here and there's all these treatment options and here I am. And so, I just knew that it was something that I could do to not only, one, benefit myself, but look at future options and, advancing science, and that's like, again, the most important thing at the end of the day. And I have a history of, family members having other neurodegenerative disorders that are extremely frustrating because we don't know what's causing it. And so being a part of these things, whether it's trying a new medication or a new therapeutic or something that would be diagnostic, that would be looking at a biomarker, I mean, all of these things help us get a step closer to finding that cure. And that's why I feel like it's so important. And there are also benefits to myself and personally for participating. So it's a win-win all the way around.
Great. Thank you, Angie. And I'd love to now see if Becky can join us. And one, if you could respond to the question, but also comment on some of what has just been shared by the other panel members with regards to what's most meaningful, and particularly being able to participate in clinical research that gathers answers that may benefit others in the future, especially members within your own community or people who are really carrying the burden of disease most similar to your own. So Becky, if I could just call you in now, if you could comment as well.
Yeah, sure. And, it kind of resonates because for me, it's really exciting to be able to be involved in getting, being involved with getting a drug to market that could either help someone in their disease process or even eradicate disease. So I was just involved in the COVID trials, these large vaccine COVID trials. And I mean, we worked, long, arduous hours on them. But, then seeing on the news how it's helping all of the people and really protecting against COVID was really exciting and meaningful. And it was also meaningful because, like you said, about communities and, we were reaching communities most negatively impacted by COVID and spreading awareness and raising awareness and recruiting them as participants in trials and at the same time making it easier to participate by setting up mobile research vehicles. And so on their way to and from work, people were able to stop in, learn more about the study, without having to travel out of their way. So I just think that was really meaningful. And then also then, the amplified focus that now industry has on designing more inclusive trials that has kind of resulted from the COVID studies and has gone now beyond COVID, making more sustainable change.
That's great. Lisa, if I could invite you to comment, and then we'll ask Carmen to make some comments as well.
Thank you. I think what I feel is most rewarding in being in this field and what I see and I get to experience is really the empowerment that I see once we speak to our participants. Once we let them know, inform them about whatever illness they may be facing or coming across, and explain to them what is available to them, what their options are, what their rights are, just everything that they need to know. It really transcends all of us in my research team to another level, because now you really feel as if they have a really good understanding. And it may be just slightly more than they came in with, or a whole load more. But it's really that sense of arming them with that information so that they feel comfortable to make that decision. I really like how this community, the Hispanic community, and a lot of our communities, it's a family affair. So you're not just talking to the individual that may have cancer or liver disease, but you're talking to the daughter or the son or whomever it is, and really informing them that, look, this is something that is available to you that may not have been 10, 15 years ago, but it is now. And we know that it may work and that it shows safety and efficacy. So again, really, at the end of the day, it's just empowering our community and our participants with, hey, you know what? I can do this. I can, make a difference in not only my health and in the journey of my disease, but in generations to come.
Great. And Carmen, if you can help us just sort of close out this particular topic. Carmen may be on mute as well.
Oh, I may be on mute. I am. Thank you.
There you go.
So echoing what Lisa said, I think creating that connective thread and seeing those aha moments when you're out in the community, engaging with patients and providing education that presents clinical trials as an option and also brings patients to a point where they feel empowered as a patient to inquire about clinical trials as an option. And in the work that I do, I get to bring the voices of those patients back into the walls of Pfizer and share that with my clinical team so that we are making considerations to address concerns that patients have, enable our healthcare professionals to, communicate and explain the clinical trial journey properly to a patient, or to consider new ways, as Becky touched on, of decentralizing trials and bringing trials to the people. So it's exciting work when we get to bring the patient into the fold of creating and improving the clinical trial process.
Great. So let's transition now. And we, in fact, received a question from the audience already that might help sort of frame this part of our discussion. Someone had asked if doctors or healthcare providers suggest clinical trial opportunities, or if they're a good source to identify a trial opportunity. And what they were really also getting at is the challenge that they encountered in trying to find or identify the appropriate trial. So I'd like to turn it over to the panel to talk about that challenge, and if you see other challenges or aspects of clinical research that could present some difficulty for someone considering participation or eager to learn more about participating in a trial. And maybe if we can go back to Malik to kick us off, if you could talk a bit about that question. Is a healthcare provider really a good place to go to for help in identifying clinical trials, and then other challenges that you see?
Yeah, so going to a healthcare provider can be definitely a good option. In terms of like our side, we do send out some of our brochures to some different physicians and doctors in the area who might have some patients who are struggling with some of those type of symptoms. For example, if somebody's taken like 5 antidepressant medications and none of them have worked, so they're considered treatment resistant, we have like a treatment resistant depression study that they might refer somebody to because there's like no medications that are currently on the market to help them treat those symptoms. Same thing with something like migraines. And then also we do advertise for these studies as well, just to kind of spread awareness and do these outreach events such as this one and more as well. Just to try to inform the public a little bit more about different types of studies that might be out there, answer questions that they might have. One bad thing if somebody's interested would be like doing their own research on the web. If you type in anything is bad on Google, you're going to find something that says that thing is bad. So, definitely try to go to a professional, somebody who knows about that, like clinical trials, somebody who's well informed so that they'll be able to give some more information about available options closer to you.
And it's such a great point, Malik, that in some ways there's so much information, almost too much and really being able to navigate and get through it. It's important that you speak with people who have expertise or your healthcare provider. And as was mentioned in the intro, in the video, or that animation, that it's also important to reach out to some of the research centers in the area. They have study staff who are very knowledgeable as well. Let me turn it over to Angie and ask if there are particular challenges that you would like to raise awareness about with our audience and people considering clinical research participation.
Yeah, well, I'm going to piggyback off of what Malik just said is ideally, you would anticipate that your healthcare practitioner is the primary person that's going to be informing you of opportunities to treat your condition. Having worked in the medical system, I know how strained it is and how things change over time with time constraints like, oh, we only have 20 minutes and we don't have time to do a physical exam and all this other stuff. So I find that sometimes that is less opportune for someone to suggest unless, like, you know, let's say I would come in and I'd have a lot of questions, which I always do. And then that might spar someone to say, oh, well, we have a study with this. But to just be sitting there thinking of a list of things and say, hey, have you done this? I really feel like there needs to be more of a push versus a pull. And it not to always be coming from your healthcare provider, because even as a healthcare professional, I know that there was clinicaltrials.gov and there was the National Institutes of Health and whatever, but it's not like I'm running out to do those, right? And even just like kind of thinking about what I wanted to talk about for this particular session, I went on and I found some organizations that you can enroll in and they will notify you. And it's like so nice to know that there are things out there that I've kind of over time, since I've had more time on my hands, to sit there and reach out and see and put like inquiries and have stuff come back. And so I just learned, interestingly, that a study that I was going to be involved in out in the California area, I never heard. And surprisingly, and this is just how crazy this is, I go on and I'm looking at this list through this site that I found, and the study is starting, right? And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? But yet they're not on the list anymore. So I now, you know, was like doing with a live agent, can I have the contact of the PI, So those sorts of things are really helpful if you are looking for, and if you know what you're looking for, even if you don't know what you're looking for, it's a branching point, or events like this to, you know, share those. And I have friends that are in the medical industry that I passed on, because everybody is touched with medical issues at one point in their life. So, you know, it's like, hey, you might want to get connected here to this group, and because you don't know where to look, right? And so I think this is fabulous. And there's a huge challenge. There's too much information. It's overwhelming, and you just don't even know where to go.
Very helpful, Angie. And I think you raise a number of good points, as others have mentioned as well, but I just want to highlight them. There is so much information, and you can also tap family members and friends to help you work your way through it. I think the most important thing is really not to give up, or not to assume that you, when you reach a piece of information that feels like a door may have closed, that's the end of options that might be available for you. Charlene, I know you've been eager to weigh in as well, so let me invite you to comment and provide some thoughts about challenges and how you learn about and think about clinical research participation. Let me turn it over to you.
Well, one of the biggest challenges is with most things, it's just a lack of education, a lack of knowledge, and people don't even know. And many times we don't know what we don't know. So we don't even know what questions to ask or where to start. My situation was a little bit differently because I work in clinical research and I work at a major cancer research facility. I know that there are things out there. So that's one of the reasons why I kind of took it upon myself, and not, just when I started the process, and it occurred to me that I'm like, this is a journey I'm about to go on. This is not just a one-time isolated incident. This is a journey I'm about to go on. And I'm going to take as many people on this journey with me, and hopefully they will never have to be in a position to decide if I want to do a clinical trial or standard care. But if they do, they'll know that it's okay and that it's important to do that. And I don't have, I'm very transparent, and I don't know how many hundreds of people are hearing this, but I emailed a core group of women that's in my life. I emailed them and just reminded them about, getting your mammogram and all this kind of stuff. But I also took them step by step with me as I went through my treatment. I even, I was comfortable enough to share pictures. So, because what I wanted to be understood is like, yeah, this is not a good thing, but watch me from beginning to end and see how I progress and see how I come out of it and see that it's okay. And so when it comes to clinical trial participation, a lot of people just don't, because they're just not aware. And also, unfortunately, I've noticed in different capacities that I've worked in this field that sometimes there's a hesitancy with physicians or people who are the ones that are presenting the clinical trial or suggesting the clinical trial. A lot of times, if people have language barriers, or just they kind of have a preconceived notion, well, maybe this won't be good for this person because of, so then it never even gets offered. So that's one thing I think as a research community we have to work on, and not just have presumptions about who may or may not, you offer it based on, criteria. Are they eligible? Because every clinical trial has a list of, these are the things that make you eligible to participate in this trial. And then go from there and overcome the hurdles and deal with things that, like, for instance, if it's somebody that does not speak English, and all the other things that you may have to do. Because clinical trials can only be successful if we have a diverse group of people, diverse ethnicities that participate in them, because genetically we're different. So we need a vast amount of people in a large group of people, diverse people, to participate in trials. So there are some challenges, and like you guys said, Angie and yourself, sometimes going on the internet is just too much. It's just overwhelming. It's just too much, and so that kind of frightens some people off. So I think just as a research community, we have to always just be continually thinking about the best way to get the message out there about clinical trials, especially to people who may not necessarily be in a position to get it like others may get it.
Thank you so much. Let's see if we can invite Becky in to kind of close out this part of our discussion. Those were really great points, Charlene. Becky, if you could just piggyback a bit and talk about your experience and some of the challenges that you've observed among a diverse community of patients.
Yeah, certainly. So exactly as Charlene had shared, that sometimes, one barrier and one reason why we don't have representation from all groups is, there's lots of reasons, but one is because, quite simply, they're not asked. And it could be because of a perception that, they don't want to join, or maybe that they mistrust research. But it really comes down to a lot of times the perception of mistrust could be they just need more information in order to make a decision of whether or not to participate. But I think that, would help is if, we focus a lot of times on the patient level barriers, and there's certain things that we can do to help research sites in having conversations about the historical misconduct, Tuskegee and the Puerto Rico birth control pill study, and all of the precautions and regulations that are now in place. But then in addition to that, so helping sites being able to address and communicate and share information about those occurrences, and then also looking at systemically, how else can we improve access, like selecting sites in the right locations and making sure that they have the right training, and we're helping to facilitate the community engagement and the education and awareness.
Well, all of you have really raised our awareness of some of the reasons why the processing of information and acting on information can be difficult. Several of you mentioned the fact that sometimes people don't even know what questions to ask. And then you also raised the point that there are misconceptions, there are perceptions based on false information or only partial information. So let's transition now and talk about, based on your experience, perhaps with people that you've interacted with and you've talked about clinical research, where you see a major misconception across a large number of people, something that's really very common. And Lisa, maybe I can turn to you first. As you interact with patients at your center, are there really large misconceptions that you often find yourself having to address or discuss to provide some education?
I think that's an excellent question, Ken. And it's something that we have to address to many of our patients when we're talking to them about the study. I think that, one of the biggest misconceptions that our community has is, well, once the study is over, then what's going to happen? Are you going to, then is that it for me? Right now, there's so much attention with me. I'll speak on behalf of the patient, to come in and I'm getting text messages from you, the site, to, make my visits and how am I doing? But once the study's over, what happens? And so we get well, you're only interested in me right now, but what's going to happen afterwards? Another thing too is I think there's still not enough information that's being provided to, I think maybe as Becky might have said, the sites or even to the providers, right? The providers are, I need to treat my patient, I need to see my patient, as opposed to what's out there, what innovation is out there. And it's typically, more of the freshly minted graduates out of their residency, physicians that are coming in and, up to date with the most and the latest and the greatest, that are like, look, we need to do this, and are really focused on evidence-based medicine. And so it really depends, really informing the site, the investigator, the physician, and then also reassuring the patient, no, this is what's going to happen. This is what's happening before, during, and this is what's going to happen after, right? So, bringing that level of comfort to the study will be over, yes, but, we still will keep you informed. We will let you know how this resulted, and, ensuring them that we're not just going to forget about them.
Right. Thank you, Lisa. And Malik, if I can invite you to comment as well, just based on your interactions, your experience with patients at your center, are there particular misconceptions that you frequently find you need to address, or concerns that some of the patients bring up?
Yeah, so for some of the studies, some people were kind of concerned about the fact that they can't choose whether to be on a particular medication or in the placebo chance as well. So these studies do need data of some people who aren't taking the active medication, so we do need that data in order to see how well this medication is actually working. So that's kind of some of the misconception that I see a lot. Some people don't really understand the placebo chance in some of our, randomized double-blind studies. So that would just mean that you don't have the choice to decide if you're on the medication or not. You wouldn't know. Most of these will be like short-term studies, and just kind of seeing how well a population, or like half the population, is working while on the medication, and half the population is being affected while on the placebo, or essentially nothing. And then also just the fact about clinical research studies, they are all paid and voluntary, and the screening process is very thorough. Some people are kind of hesitant to take medications because they don't know if it's like going to affect them or anything. If you're in a phase 3 trial, it has been tested on human participants before, along with the fact that the screening process is going to be very intensive. You're going to have a whole bunch of labs done, and they're going to make sure that you're completely healthy prior to going into a study. They don't want to jeopardize anybody's health whatsoever in any manner.
Great. And Lisa asked if she could follow up after your comment. So Lisa, right back to you, and then we'll go to Charlene and Angie. Go ahead.
I think Malik brought up a really, really good point, because there are these studies in which you have to explain to the patient, well, you may receive the medication, but you may receive the placebo, and they're going to say, well, why would I do that, right? Why would I get on a study in which I'm going to receive something that, may or may not help? Secondly, if the study involves patients that may be naive to a specific treatment, you've got patients that are relatively healthy. We're involved in a large pragmatic study, and patients, one of the exclusionary is to be on a specific medication. And so you tell them, you need patients that are not on medication. So when you tell them, hey, we're going to give you a medication, the participant says, why would I take, I'm fine. Why would I start taking a medication when I don't have to? So I think we have to be strategic in the way in which we, design studies, approach the patient, and then execute. So I thank you, Malik, for bringing that up, and it just brought something to mind. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank all of our panelists. If you can believe it, we've run out of time, and there were just so many great points that were raised. I want to thank each of you for sharing your thoughts and experience. We do have some audience questions that came through, and we'll try to respond to all of those via email. And we encourage everybody to go to the exhibit hall, as well as even to spend some time on the CISCRP website if you're looking for some educational information. And Justine, I'm going to turn it back over to you now for the rest of our program. And I thank you again to all of our panelists for a great discussion this evening.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all so much for volunteering your time. This was so interesting, so informative. We really appreciate all that you guys do to improve public health. So thank you again. And I would also like to thank all of our attendees for joining us tonight at Aware for All Southwest. Don't forget to visit that informational exhibit center, browse the educational handbook, and visit our website for even more resources to continue your learning. We also have a brief survey, which can be found by clicking the clipboard icon on the bottom of your screen, which I'm also going to highlight for you now. We really appreciate it if you guys could take that, and answering these questions will really help us to enhance the programs moving forward. We also invite you to follow along on our social media channels to stay up to date with all things CISCRP. If you follow CISCRP on Instagram and you like our most recent post, you'll be entered to win an Amazon Fire TV stick. And finally, a huge thank you to any medical heroes in attendance tonight. At CISCRP, we refer to individuals who give the gift of participation in clinical trials as medical heroes. And without them, we would not be able to conduct new research to discover new cures and new treatments. So we're going to keep this page open for just a few more minutes so everyone has a chance to visit the IEC and download any resources you might want. And thank you all again for joining us, and I hope that we see you again soon at another Aware event.